Good morning, Hampton Roads, and welcome to Virginia's only local real estate investing podcast, where we get to talk about local investors, local deals, and all things local. How you doing? I am your host, the founder of the Master Investor Academy, and author of my best-selling book, Work Just Gets in the Way of Making Money, Scott Jelinek. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, properties you'd like to sell, anything you want to go over on the podcast, go ahead and text me at 757-699-4227. So it's another beautiful day here. Now it's the first work day of the year. I'm excited to get back out there. I got my first closing. It's not going to be today. It's going to be tomorrow. So pick up my first check for 2021. I think I spoke to you guys on Saturday. We didn't get too much done over the weekend, but one thing I wanted to tell you was, I don't know if you guys watched the show, but the new season of Cobra Kai came out, and my son's all about it. So we've been watching it. Well, it came out, I think, on the first. Well, on the second, we were in our movie theater, and we literally watched the entire season in one day. I'm not proud of that, but you know, what are you going to do? The boy kept saying, one more episode. And so now we're done until whenever they put out the next season. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is I put out a video yesterday. Well, I talked to you guys on this podcast about finding buyers for your SlowFlips. Well, then I put out a video on YouTube. If you're not on my YouTube channel, go ahead. You can just type my name in and it'll come up on it. I did an extended coaching meeting that I did with my coaching clients on going over deeper dive into SlowFlips. Well, anyway, I got several questions then text into me. And so I figured rather than respond to everybody, I was just going to go over those questions right here on the podcast. So first off, if you are not familiar with SlowFlips, then none of this is even going to make any sense to you. This is only going to be relevant if, in fact, you are interested or are doing the SlowFlip model, no matter where you may be. So I'm going to read you some of these questions, and then I'm going to go ahead and answer them for you. I'm going to read them one at a time. So the first one said, is 30K still your max buying limit for SlowFlips? So the short answer to that is, for me, mostly yes. However, I have students that do 40 and 50 grand. The reason is I either use my own money, or if I'm using our private lenders, we pay out 12%. So the reason we came up with 30,000 was because at 30,000 on a 5-year mortgage, our payment is 667. The average payments we collect is 875. So I wanted to make sure it wasn't upside down. If you bought a more expensive property, you might say, well, I'm only losing $50 a month, or I'm only losing $100 a month, but it's only for 5 years. And I get that. I've done that. The problem with that is you can't scale it. You can't now say you're losing $100 a month. You're like, no big deal. It's only 5 years. I'm losing $100 a month, but I got this nicer property. That's true. But now what if you're losing $100 a month and you decide to do 5 of them or 10 of them? Well, now you're losing $1,000 a month, and it's not going to be long until you absolutely hate this business. So two answers to that question is, one, if you're using your own money, clearly you can be more flexible then. If you're paying cash, you can say, okay, I want a $50,000 one, or I want a $45,000 one, or whatever the terms may be. The other flip side, and I have some coaching students who are doing this, if you're borrowing money and you secured your own private lenders, you may have negotiated a 6% rate, and you may have negotiated a 7-year term instead of a 5-year term, or whatever it works out to be. All you have to do is put all that math into your amortization calculator and make sure that you can come out covering that payment for the short term until it's paid off. That's it. I don't like people being upside down, and I don't like them, being negative, because it could snowball on you to where you no longer like it. All right. The next question was, where can you buy houses for under 30 grand? And can you do this in mobile home parks? So that's getting trickier and trickier. So mostly now, again, this is a local podcast. So if you're a local, if you're in my area, we have a lot in Newport News. We have some in Hampton. We got some in Portsmouth. I used to be able to buy in Norfolk. I can't find many anymore. There's a few neighborhoods in Chesapeake. There's tons of them out in Suffolk. That's if you're local. If you're not local, mostly all up and down the East Coast. So I have friends in Baltimore who crush it out there doing this model. I have friends in Philly who crush it, Alabama, Tennessee, even in Florida, there's areas that are doing really good doing this model. They're a little bit higher, 35, 38,000, but most areas you can do it. Now, if you're on Long Island, you can forget about it. You can't get a garage for 200 grand, so it's not going to work in certain areas. Ohio, they crush it with this model. I mean, there's tons in the whole Midwest. So again, this is a local podcast, so I'm telling you the cities here locally, but most areas, and if you live on an area like Long Island, you would have to look outside your market because it won't work in those high dollar areas. Can you do it on mobile homes? So I'm going to tell you a little story about that. The short answer is yes. And to be honest with you, that's kind of how I got into this business, and not real estate, but into the slow flipping model. Is years ago, I used to buy, and this is during the boom, I started buying in 94. Well, in about 2001, 2002, I got into mobile homes, and I would buy them and owner finance them. Same model we're doing with SlowFlips. And it works really well. The challenge with it is twofold. One is they were all small numbers. So each one I did, I was getting $226 a month. I'll tell you, my numbers were, I would pay about $2,000 for them. I would sell them at $8,900. I would owner finance them with $500 down. The payments were $226 a month for 8 years, amortized for 8 years. It was awesome because at about 10 months, I was free and clear of it, and the rest was pure profit. The downside was twofold. One is the payments are very small. So my payments were $226 a month, and I maybe had 25 of them. So it was getting somewhere, but it wasn't 30 years. So then they would fall off after a certain amount of years. And it's the same amount of work to find one, to contract it, to put a person in there. It was all the same amount of work, but smaller numbers. And that's number one. Number two is, unless you own the park, which I never got involved with any of that, they own you. You're basically living in someone else's, you're doing business in someone else's village, and they can control and tell you whatever they want, and you have no choice. And I'm going to tell you what solidified my head to get out of it. I had a bunch of them in the same park in Virginia Beach. I got along great with the managers, which is what you're supposed to do. The managers would actually call me and send me deals, which was fantastic. Well, the last one I did, and this is why it was the last one, manager calls me. I got this person that needs to sell their property. I told them that you'd be giving them a call. They only want $2,000, whatever the numbers were. I don't really remember. And so I go out there, I do a deal with them, and I buy it. Now I market it, and I found a buyer for the property. We go in because your buyer has to be approved by the park. So we go in for the buyer to get approved from the park, and the park manager says, "Oh, no, you can't sell it until you put a new skirting on it and replace the oil tank." And I was like, "No, they're buying it, so they're going to be responsible." "No, we won't transfer it until you do that." And I'm like, "But you just transferred it to me." And they were like, "Nope, sorry, that's all. That's our rule." And basically, they were looking at it as, "Well, you have the money, so I'm going to make you do it." And that's when I said, "That's it. I'm out of here. I'm not being under someone's thumb," which is where I was in a trailer park. Again, unless you own the trailer park. All right. So what was the next question? What about doing slow flips for $100,000 homes and getting bigger down payment? That would equal your first 6 slow flips, saying you get 15 grand down. For instance, I buy a 30-year mortgage with 150,000. So you can do that, but now you're not doing slow flips. That you can buy regular houses, conventional houses at good rates, and then sell them at higher rates with owner financing. You can absolutely do that. The reason I became obsessed with the low end is because, and I'm going to use real numbers for you. I'm going to use a real house I own. I used to live in it. I have one that's slow flipped out that's worth about $330,000. When I bought it, I paid $159 for it. I bought it in 2001 though. I have a guy who's been in there for about 10 years, and he pays me $1,850 a month, right? So I'm just trying to lay out the math for you. He pays me $1,850 a month. With that same $300,000, I could get 10 low-end properties and get $8,700 a month. So that's the whole reason. It's not that you can't do these other ones. You can absolutely do this model with anything. I've done a commercial building on the slow flip model, and we'll talk about that another time. It was one of the best deals I've ever done. But when you compare the rate of return on a $200,000, like for instance, in Virginia Beach, if I buy a $150,000 townhouse, I'll probably get $1,275. For that $150,000, I could get 5 $800 payments. So that's $4,000 a month. So $1,275 or $4,000. That's what I'm all about, the cash flow, making the money on a monthly. And so, yes, you may have a better property, or you get to hug and kiss it and you're in love with that house. And if that's what you're into, there's nothing wrong with that. I still have a lot of nice houses from prior to the bust. That's just not my model anymore. Now my model is all about rate of return and cash flow. And on another podcast, we're going to talk about compound interest and the enormous, crazy effects of compound interest. But once you understand how much of your rate of return affects your future, you'll become obsessed with it. And we'll talk about that at another time. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, so the next question was, what are the downsides? Okay, that was the same one. Would you make more money doing slow flips in higher price to attract middle-class people who can put more of a down payment? And so basically the same answer applies. Yes, you can get a nicer house, you can get a more down payment, but the monthly does not multiply by the same numbers. A $30,000 house and a $300,000 house, it doesn't bring in 10 times the amount of monthly. I hope that makes sense. It doesn't bring in $8,700 for a $300,000 house. It'll bring in $2,000, $2,200. And so that's really the big discrepancy, is the amount of money it brings in monthly. So I wanted to answer those questions for you. I want you to wrap your head around that we are all about the cash flow. There was a time in my life when I was obsessed with accumulating money, and it took me to lose everything to realize that I didn't need or want the money. I want the monthly. I want the monthly money. And I'll tell you why, and then I'm going to let you go. If you have $1 million in the bank, if you have $10 million in the bank, the dollar amount doesn't matter. You can't spend it or else it's gone. You can only spend the money that it makes. Does that make sense? So say, oh, I had $1 million. Well, that's great, but you can't spend it. You have to invest it. And now you can spend the money that it makes, and you'll have it forever. And so that's why I'm totally obsessed with the monthly money and not with having a dollar amount put away somewhere. I hope that makes sense to you. That's all I got for you guys today. I have one appointment today at 2:00 over in Chesapeake. It looks like a good one. I'll let you know how it goes. And that's all I wanted to share with you guys today. Do something today that your future self is going to thank you for. And you have an absolutely fantastic day. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day.